Good morning, everyone. This is Ron. Sunday morning, a little after 11 a.m., and we are ready to begin. And we will start with questions. On yesterday, we spoke from chapter 12 of Genesis, again looking at relationship with Abraham and Sarah, uh, and the what takes place in Egypt when Abraham takes his caravan down to Egypt because of the famine, and Pharaoh taking Sarah into his home. So we discussed that yesterday and tried to look at that and kind of unfold that and see what we saw there in the kind of spiritual significance that we need to grasp right now from that. So that's where we were. So, in any comments or questions on that, or anything else that may have grabbed your attention?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yesterday, you made a statement about Sarah with Pharaoh. That relationship was similar to the relationship between black women and the enslavement master. So, what is that correlation? I think I see something, but I want to ask you if you would go a little deeper into that, please.
Well, I agree with you. I see something there too, and I was trying to form it, put it together yesterday. Uh, it seems that to me what and I'm going to phrase it this way to answer your question. What the black woman offers, or what the feminine energy offers, is in essence that is not readily seen. It's not readily seen right away, but it is later one of those things that you look back on and you see an appreciation for it. Example, uh, if if this episode in Genesis happens any other way, what happens to the nation? Uh, he it happened the way he did to fortify the relationship with Abraham and Sarah, to make them grow or, or grow into uh, one being that is feminine and masculine, and to hold on to that and to be the balance of each other. Be balanced. Can I ask you to mute your phones, please, everyone? So, in looking at it from that episode, what happens? You don't see any benefit of it. You don't see the benefit of it until you notice that the balance that is brought from him recognizing who she is. Uh, it creates uh, uh, an offspring, and from the offspring, a nation is born from it. So likewise, in the what happened with uh, the African woman, it had opportunity to do likewise, because she not only, again, as Sarah did, she preserves a nation. She preserves the masculinity, and but in the other case, in the case with that we see with the African American, there was no bonding together. It did not bring them closer together. As a matter of fact, uh, it moved in a different direction, and to me, it is what brought about uh, the the brutality that comes from it, because the black male, what he saw was he was not able to protect his woman. He is not able to provide for his household. And he ends up despising her and ends up beating her because of what she had to do. He does not see that the nation was preserved. He does not see that his life was preserved. So the parallel is in the opportunity that lies before us today, to bring about balance against something that started that the seed was laid many years ago for us to take and move these splinters of thoughts and people and energy into a nation, bringing about balance into the earth. I hope that made sense, because that's all I got.
It made sense. Before I say what I see, is there anyone else want to add?
Uh, good good morning, everyone. I'm on my 30-minute break, and this whole idea of being balanced, um, me is quite intriguing. I just got finished listening to Bob Marley. Could you be love? I forgot the could you be love? Could you be love and be love? There's a balance in that, and this whole aspect of feminine energy and masculine energy, one without the other is really, if you don't have masculine energy, I'm a firm believer in, if you operate in feminine energy and you're doing it by way of intellect and creativity and the left side of your brain, without masculine energy, there is no feminine energy. Without feminine energy, there is no masculine energy. And how I look at masculine energy is very judgmental. It's designed to trip you up. It's designed to trip you up to make you whole. Um,
Recording in progress.
what was that, ma'am? Well, like I say, masculine energy, a certain part of it is designed to reject you. And people who cannot deal with rejection, they often suffer from they can't deal with a critique. They can't deal with friendly tug. So in both energies, one without the other is going to be obsolete. And just finding that balance of, like the number 8, as above, as below. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Is there anyone else? I excuse me. What do I see? First, I don't think when George was talking, I don't think he meant obsolete, because it's actually not. It does not go into place. It's just used in the wrong way. Um, the the idea of Pharaoh and Sarah related to the African woman and the slave master. What I see in that is, as Ron said, there is desire to protect. The African desires to protect his woman, but he can't, because not only would he be killed, but there were cases where he would be beaten and one of his children would be killed, or the woman would be killed, or in the case of what they did in the Congo, one hand would be cut off if you didn't fulfill what they said your obligation is. and that in itself created an atmosphere where men were slowly being um, turned away from the protection of their women because they couldn't. And that anger, sometimes it came out in different ways. So what am I saying? I am saying to this day there is a problem between feminine energy or females and males because of what happened in the past. The projection of the feminine energy or the female of the Caucasian was always projected above that of the black woman. She was simply a baby machine, a sex, a pleasurable object, and nothing more. That's how she was treated by the master of enslavement, and that kind of domination filtered into the mindset of the enslaved, and to this day, the mindset remains. It's still there, and that's one of the reasons that females or the feminine energy is not recognized now as being worthy. There's a struggle to bring that protection or that unicity back into existence, to pull away from those things that were learned during the period of enslavement and has a carry on into where we are now. The trauma of slavery that no one wants to pay attention to has resulted in that the African male treating his woman in the same manner as the white slave master does, and she gets it from both ends. And I think this portion of this is speaking very, very deeply to us, and I'm going to describe it in physical form first and then spiritual, if you would allow me. What happens is the African woman deep inside knows that she was a part of the council of elders that made decisions for the whole clan, the whole tribe. And because of that, the African male treats her differently because he's learned it through slavery. And the Caucasian male still treats the black woman the same way that she was treated in the during the period of slavery. She was unworthy of any respect. And even to this day, if a black woman asserts herself, then she is an angry black woman. If she is more astute in certain areas, and she deserves to be in leadership, she's rejected. And then on top of that, she's looked down upon because even her exterior existence or exterior body, she is looked down upon because she does not have the attributes of a white woman, and that to this day plays a role. And all of this came from the trauma of being enslaved. So where are we? We're at a place where the African male finds beauty in anything except his woman, the African woman. And this is not a blanket thing. This is not all African men, not all African women, not all white men. It's not all of anything. Everybody cannot be painted with the same brush. But I'm talking about the dominant energy in our society now. And the dominant energy in our society speaks to the diminishing of the African woman above everyone else. Why is it that the white man is afraid of the African woman from the beginning, because the white man knew what he saw when he went to raid Africa, and he saw the prominence of the African woman. He saw the strength of the African woman, and that was translated into brutalizing her physically and emotionally. Emotionally through rape and beatings, and physically other beatings, and the male could do nothing about it. I grew up, and I knew an area, everyone in Union knew the area, where these white men would go to black women's house and tell their husband, wait for me on the porch. And they went in and did things to the wife, and he could do nothing about it unless he wanted to be lynched. Those are the kinds of things that built up rage and anger in the African male because he had no outlet. I'm not making excuses for how to treat women, but I'm saying this is definitely a part of what happened. So here we are now recognizing this. So what do we do with it? If every person on earth came from an African womb, then every person on earth should at the very least respect the womb from which they came. But it has been demonized, and we have bought into that demonization. And there are African women who will allow white males to treat them like they are their property, as opposed to treating them with love and affection. They talk about how much they love them. They talk about how dear they are to their hearts, but the way they treat them behind closed doors, and the way they talk about them to their friends, it's in the manner of ownership. So right now, if we don't protect the African woman from the emotional and physical brutality that she's enduring, we will never find balance, because the balance comes from the African woman and the African male, meaning that the balance of feminine and masculine energy is what brings balance into the earth. And I also saw in that it is an end in sight. And the end in sight is when it says that the Lord spoke to Pharaoh, or Pharaoh had a dream, and he saw who Sarah was in the eyes of the Creator. We are beginning to see that same picture of our women. And for quite some time, we have been talking about the necessity in transforming the thoughts that we have about women into a balance, equality, and tremendous respect. African males did that. When we grew up, it was always my mama. We fight you about our mama. You say something about my mama, or you on TV, hey mom, those kinds of things. But that degenerated over the years, and it degenerated because the males who were the male elephants who were to bring order to the boys were put in jail for nothing. They were given long sentences during their childbearing age, and then when they came out, they were different people. So this is still going on, and it is decimating the African community. So it is up to us to bring order to this. It is up to us to have a wake-up call, as did Pharaoh, and see that the feminine energy in us, if we don't respect the female, we don't respect the feminine energy in us. We are actually rejecting it. So we have a physical representation of a spiritual truth when we look at the relationships between feminine energy and masculine, but on two sides of that. The masculine energy from the white man and the masculine energy from the African man are two different projections of it, and it has been for quite some time. And what the problem with the African male is that he has embraced the energy, the way that white males treat females as property and brutalize them at will. So we have a long road to go. However, I do believe that we are closer to it than we think we are, because there is no such thing as distance and time in the spiritual. So as long as we make every effort to stay on course with embracing the feminine and for who it is, because without that, we cannot move forward. Wisdom is feminine. Understanding is masculine. And understanding is the seed that gives you an experience. So unless there are questions or comments, I hope I was not rambling. I'm done.
Thank you, Pastor.
I have something I wanted to add to that, if I can.
Of course.
I very much agree. I just wanted to, I think, help with the understanding of what it means to connect to your feminine side if you are male, and then vice versa. I think simply it means to empathize with the experience of women if you're a man, and to empathize with the experience of men if you are a woman. And particularly because in general, in society and on the earth, it is more so that the men need to empathize with the experience of women. That is sort of more of the spiritual task that we are at present faced with. And it's not any more complicated than that, I think. If you can view the experience of women with empathy, then many of the rigid and sort of authoritarian and egotistical sort of means of holding on to power in society in general, then those sort of negative spiritual characteristics will be greatly lessened and lose their sort of ability to confuse our capacity to connect to each other, or connect to spirit and the true nature of self, which has both masculine and feminine properties or characteristics. Anyway, I just wanted to add that. I think it's as simple as learning to empathize with the experience of the other gender, and knowing when to check your own ego and allow your awareness of the experience of that other gender to inform your sort of behavior or thoughts. Thank you.
Nick, I want to kind of talk about something you said. Something you and Pastor said. We look at this and think of time, something linear that's taking place of, and as you look at history, this year, all these years pass by. So when we talk about what you just discussed and what Pastor laid out, this has nothing to do with linear time. And I want to go back to something you said a couple of weeks ago, and that is what happens in the womb, spiritually, what happens in the womb and spirit. The spirit is able to come and go, although I don't quite understand that. that kind of hit a light bulb for me. Uh, and as we look at this uh, and kind of unfolded, it looks like this took generations to happen. But something I said in the beginning, I didn't get a chance to explain it because I guess I don't quite understand it yet. But the magic or the essence of femininity is invisible. It's not something we readily see uh, immediately. And we look at things and then look back at it and see what is taking place as this seed grew into that when that wasn't what it was when it was first planted. Uh, and so this is the same way, meaning that what's going into the womb now is maybe hopelessness, it may be anger and frustration, and I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, or I'm not that, or and so that can be changed if we talk about what the womb, the seat, the seat of the womb, that spiritual place that incubates life and brings about what the nourishment that is needed. So again, when you talk, Nick, and anybody else want to talk about this, I don't want to look at this as this something that takes time. We're talking spirituality here. So if the spirit can be influenced, if you will, or if the spirit influences from the place of the womb, add that to what we've already said, please.
Okay.
Do you understand my question?
I think so. And what I said that you're referring to is that during the development of us as babies in our mothers, our sort of conscious identity, our spirit, which is what we are, has the ability to sort of go back and forth or enter and exit the body that is forming for us, at any point in that process. So if I could relate that to your question, I think, if I understand it, during that process, you begin to take on well, let me back up a little bit. So the parents of the baby form a context for the spirit that is entering this physical experience. And that context that they form for that spirit, for the baby, is also psychological. It is also spiritual. It is also mental, not just the physical sort of vehicle that we enliven when we fully enter the bodies that we take on. And that context can contain whatever sort of personality of the parents is present, whatever ideas and thoughts that the parents are very strongly attached or attracted to. And as we form within our mother, all of that we can absorb as part of the process of coming fully into this physical experience. Text is negative. You have a greater chance of absorbing that, I believe anyway, on a sort of initially as we enter this experience. If that context is positive, then we have a better chance of absorbing that as we enter this physical experience. But those things are, in that context, those things are important. But the opportunity to relearn or unlearn anything you have learned during the process of being born is just as great. So whatever you may have picked up on the way here, the experience of being here is much more immediate for the vast majority of us, and that's where we do most of our learning. Because that is why we are here, is to learn and absorb as much as possible. So regardless of what we picked up, I think it's still our environment that, for the most part, shapes our early development. I hope that helped, that question.
Thank you. I guess what I'm and looking at is the way this thing is laid out, and who we are today. Uh, it looks like, hopelessness. It looks like this thing may, if you look at the state of the world, look at the state of the African. But what I'm looking at is who we are, and what it means to be able to see yourself as energy, or the spiritual part of you, and what influences you have. And there's something we have said from the very beginning that still holds true, and it's a very simple concept. And just a little bit of light always conquers the greatest darkness. So as we move forward and rediscover ourselves, so to speak, that is what we're doing, bringing light to these situations as we verbalize them and put breath to them.
I want to add something to what Nick said. Even children born in the same family with the same basic contextual environment can be very different in terms of what they absorb. And so that's the beauty of moving forward, learning what we're supposed to do, making decisions from the choices we have, and deciding to become who we are, the essence of who we are. And that's why it can travel in so many different ways, even with siblings from the same family. Because you would think someone would say, well, he came from the same parents. Why is this way and this was this way? Because they absorbed differently. And it's still their journey to rise above the negativity that was absorbed and to capitalize on the positives that were absorbed. So we each uniquely have to do that. And that's part of the individual journey. And that's part of our collective journey once we understand on a larger scale, on the macro, of what humanity needs. So we all were not designed, I guess my bottom line is we all were not designed to have the very same journey. That's part of the diversity. That's part of the experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there are as many journeys as there are people. And I want to add, just related to this, the transition that we're going through in the American society in particular, but that as representative of what is happening in the world in general. And it is a return to the respect and reverence that is due to femininity. But what we are seeing, and as we've spoken about this many times before, is the pushback against that. It is the essentially out of control or unchecked ego of a confused sort of masculine consciousness that thinks its job is to overcorrect, and to describe it charitably, to sort of rigidly oppress everything that is out of line. But it is doing that while disconnected from its empathetic connection to femininity. It is doing that while disconnected from its ability to draw from spirit and the knowledge that all things are connected. And while in that disconnected state, that's where the overcorrection occurs. That's where the extreme rigidity and sort of where we get like the concept of toxic masculinity on a popular level from. That's the out of ignorance, acting out of ego, to the extreme of what it means to be masculine, which is generally always self-destructive and destructive of others. And everything we're seeing in terms of the on a societal or political level in the United States in particular, everything we're seeing, generally speaking, from Republicans and conservatives is an example of the pushback against the rising consciousness that is present within everyone, that we all know that we must return to a more empathetic, harmonious way of living and connecting with each other, and that cannot be done without the respect and reverence due to the feminine principle, embodied in particular by women. Thank you.
So understanding that and knowing that, we should not be surprised by the pushback. In other words, we know that there is going to be that extreme resistance, particularly when it comes from a place of ignorance. So the issue is not to acquiesce and to give up and to become despondent about that, and to give in to that. The response that we should have is to, I think Pastor said it yesterday, stay the course, keep on doing what we're doing, because the more we see that pushback, the more we understand that what we're putting in the macro is working. And so just stay the course.
Absolutely. And I believe that's what is being spoken about in the New Testament, where you hear I forget exactly where, but the concept of wars and rumors of wars. Spiritually speaking, I believe that means at the turning of the age, or the transition from one age to another, there is always this intense flare-up of sort of chaotic behavior or whatever, internally as well as externally. And that sort of flare-up is exactly that thing. Yeah, that would distract us if we were to focus on it and become despondent as a result of what we see, sort of on the surface level, not understanding that the only reason it is present is because of the underlying pushback against that confusion, against that sort of oppressive, authoritative power that has been in place in whatever form. And the only reason that we see this sort of increase in chaos may even be too strong a word, but the increase in that pushback that we get from this out of control masculinity in particular, is because of what is happening on a spiritual level. And it is sort of spilling over into how we relate to each other in society, physically, etc. Anyway, thank you.
I have a comment and a question. This is Evelyn. I want to go back to what Pastor was talking about, how the Caucasian man does not respect the African woman. I was at the agency, of course, and we had these people had a board meeting. So the white men, Caucasian men, they were just standing in front of the elevator. I mean, it was a bunch of them. They would not move. They saw people trying to get on and off the elevator. They would not move. I had to go to another department. Well, when I got back, they were still there. So I politely asked them, I say, if you will, please move aside so people can get in go get off and on the elevator. I heard this white man say, "There's a troublemaker." And to be honest with you, I wanted to slap his face. But I didn't, because I didn't want to lose my job. Anyway, that strongly shows me how the Caucasian has a stronghold on society. Now, I'm reading this book, and it says the fourth dimension has a lot to do with feminine energy. Can someone elaborate on that for me?
Can you describe what that book is describing a bit more?
Well, it doesn't go into detail. Well, it was talking about what we're talking about, how the fourth dimension is the age of feminine energy, because women have been abused and, put up under a man's feet, so to speak. But it was saying how the fourth dimension is going to be about feminine energy. And that's why I'm asking you the question, the family the question. Do y'all see anything with that?
I do. Nick, you want to deal with that first?
Yeah, I'll respond to that. I think that is correct. I think the way we talk about dimensions can become a little confused depending on who's attempting to describe that concept. But generally, I think that's correct. The era we are moving into, the new dimension of experience and the nature of the consciousness that we are all sort of present within, is very much one that is more in line with the harmony of nature, which requires respecting femininity, which requires recognizing the importance of femininity spiritually, physically, in society, etc. And that, I do believe, is the direction we're moving in. Obviously, we are kicking and screaming the sort of old generation into this new generation with respect to the changing of the age. Anyway, but yeah, thank you.
I can speak a little bit to that. Good morning, this is Audrey. Weeks ago, when we were talking about wine and being thoughts, and anyway, I'd done a little bit of research on that, and I came across this thing where it was talking about how seven kind of represent like a cube, and that a cube has width, depth, and height. That's 3 dimensions. But it said that if you're talking about a number that has a 0 behind the 7, like 70 or 700, you're talking about the center of the cube, which is kind of another dimension. So I think in relation to the female energy would kind of be like the center of that cube, because it's female energy that, as we've always said, is what births things into this reality. So I think that 4th dimension would be talking about getting to the heart of things, getting to the interior, getting to the what really matters, and what really connects us and births things out of us. Anyway, I hope that helps.
Good morning. Based upon what Ms. Evelyn stated, anyone that does not respect the female, trust and believe they have no respect for the male also. It goes hand in hand. And the world that I live in, are there some European males who don't respect females? Yes. Are there some African American males that don't respect females? Yes. And also in my world, there are females who don't respect. I don't know if any of you all are aware of that, yet in my world, that is true. And to me, one of the biggest things that aid in bringing balance to humanity is how well do we deal with compromising? Um, Compromise is something very easy to do, yet I can make it difficult because I got to give something up. And if I got to give something up to aid humanity, guess what? I may be immature. I'm not going to give it up. And I'm not the only one that's like that. I know people, they cannot compromise. I know people that if I get in their vehicle, they going to tell me, hey, George, you need to put your seatbelt on. I won't put my seatbelt on. Yet I'm going to put it on. Yet the minute that I tell them, hey, you shouldn't text while you're driving, they don't want to compromise on that. So what's really going to aid humanity is how well you compromise. Uh, Based upon what Miss Evelyn stated, she's at the elevator. Once you see a situation and it's very difficult to do, yet very easy to do, and you're present in it, when you see people don't want to work with you, you either bail out and live to see another day, or if you stay there, you're going to have to protect people. Just last week, going into Walmart in Gaffney, I'm coming in with that 18-wheeler. I'm making a turn. A four-wheeler comes up and takes up all the equity that I can't make the turn. I can look at him and tell he don't want to reason with me because how he raced up to take the equity. And it doesn't matter whether he's a European male, Puerto Rican male, Jamaican male, it doesn't matter. I just pull my park brakes, get out my truck, and I just smoked a cigarette. Somebody gonna have to give. And other truckers that were males, female, all came to that situation, and we just looked at them. You're gonna have to back on back. So, uh, with anything in humanity, is how well do you compromise? One person should not always give up something to make something float. In conclusion, one of the things I like about certain people, when Monique and I take a family or a group of people out to eat, he'll pay for the meal. And someone will say, well, hey, George or Monique, y'all paying for the meal, I'll leave the tip. That's working together. And that I've come a long way in that, because if I'm going to pay the meal, I like to see everything through for my own ego. However, for people to work with me, work with Monique and I, hey, that's a good solid act y'all did, act of servitude or act of charity. How about I leave a tip that reflects everyone's character for the waiter or waitress? How well you compromise out here is going to have a lot to do with the balance that you bring in humanity. Thank you.
I I want to speak to that in a moment. However, with Evelyn's question, your experience was, excuse me, twofold. Is how those males look at African femininity and white femininity. See, look at what they said to you, you troublemaker. All because you asked them to move. That is engendered in white males for the most part. They deal with white females differently than that. Excuse me, ma'am. Sure. Would have been the common response, I do believe. because of past experience. I know how you felt in that regard, and I'm glad you refrained from doing what you felt like you wanted to do, and you end up doing what you needed to do. And that is leaving the situation where it is, and at the same time, your presence there has made a difference whether they recognize it or not. There are no coincidences in life. Everything is orchestrated by the universe. You just make a decision about how you're going to handle it, and the decision you make about how you handle it is determined. It determines rather whether you're handling it based upon your earthly consciousness or your spiritual consciousness, and your mind wanted to experience the earthly consciousness. And but your soul said, walk away. And that's what you did. So I see that as a common experience when it comes to the interactions between white males in particular and black people generally. As far as the idea of compromise, what I have learned, and the reason I walked away from politics, is because politics is full of compromises. And poor people and people of color always give up something during the compromise. Was there truly a compromise during the Missouri Compromise when the decision was made, was being made, rather Missouri, I think it was the state was Oklahoma, were going to have slaves, and they decided one would and one would not. That's not a compromise. That's just taking advantage of situations. I mean, that is a compromise, rather, but it's not a consensus. What I have learned through interaction with Africans in the diaspora as well as Africans on the continent is that we are more about consensus as opposed to compromise. There is a huge difference between consensus and compromise. Consensus speaks to the idea that we've talked about this thing and we've addressed it from different angles, and we have come to a consensus that it should go this way. What does that mean? That means that rather than say you got to give up something, let's just talk about what's best for everyone. That's where the consensus comes in. Compromise has always been to the advantage of the one who desires to compromise. And compromise, what we have done during the civil rights movement, what we have done even in churches, we have compromised. We have compromised to the extent that we have allowed all of the creative authority of the African to be usurped by the white church. That the black church follows in the footsteps of the white church in that regard. So I do believe that a world of compromise is a world of destruction. The one with the power determines what the compromise is going to be. But with the consensus, everybody has power. Everyone has opportunity to speak to the issues. Everyone has an opportunity to state what they feel. That's how, in my studies rather, I found that's how pre-African governments, that's how they functioned differently than the way they did after slavery and colonialism. The king in an African setting did not rule the people. The king in the African setting was the leader of the people, but did not rule the people. People ruled themselves through consensus of their representatives with the king. And I hope that helps, Evelyn and Claire, in understanding what you are dealing with. Out of all the ones of us who have spoken, I hope that helps. And if there's anyone else like to add something or comment, please do so. Ask the question. I'm done.
I
Oops. Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, it's Richard, your son. I wanted to go back to what you said a little earlier, just get a clarification. The idea, and I'm simplifying it, of call it the young soul or essence, preparing, choosing, etc., to enter into this plane of existence. Have I got that? Is that a correct way to kind of say what we said? I know it's simplified, but
I believe so.
okay. What was interesting about it to me, I find myself, and I think this would be interesting to others, wandering off into sort of a poetic interpretation of that and thinking, think of how profoundly different we might view each other if we understood, if we believed and understood that, and thereby were confronted with, say, a young individual anyway, or an individual who seemed rather, just to make it simple for conversation, crude, rough, or from a really difficult background. Think of how different it would change our perspective if we had the inkling or sense that this soul, this essence, by and large, chose this way to enter into this plane, as opposed to started out being perfect and then got corrupted very quickly, something like that. Because it suddenly makes me go back, and there are a lot of issues I still have in my history with my family. It makes me want to sit down and think, suppose I chose to be in the family I was in. What can I do with that? What does that mean? How could that affect my understanding of what happened, of their journeys, my journey, etc. Anyway, I just couldn't get that out of my mind, so I thought I'd share it with you all.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I just make a suggestion. Suppose, Richard, that you did choose that family, and suppose that you're on the journey now to change all of the energy of your family, which is not limited to your biological family, but the family of people who process the same way. Suppose you're the catalyst to travel this journey with bodies that are seeking truth and reconciliation from previous experiences that all were negative, pretty much. And you are the catalyst to change the mindset that made that happen. Suppose that's the choice you made because you have chosen to do that.
Yeah,
You
I hear you. Yeah, oh yeah, I hear you. It's just that the normal place to start would be with ourselves and with our immediate world, which was our family. And if there's still some unsettled or unclear issues there, you work outward from that, I would think. Doesn't mean it has to take a lifetime and you have to sit on a couch to do all that. But I get what you're saying, absolutely. And to be honest, I've been very quiet about it most of my life, really, except for maybe what others have seen in me, which I hope is the same, that I felt that. I have felt that for most of my life, at least since the time I woke up in the early 60s. But for the last number of years, and then with some of the things that happened with my marriage, etc., I just shut a lot of that down, and then people passed away. But I just thought it was Nick sort of rekindled that thinking in me, not rekindled it, but brought it back up to the surface a little bit. That if all of us just this is where I was supposed to be. This is where I chose to be. More importantly, right? Not where I was supposed to be and said, was selected. You go there. I chose that. So what is it about that I can still, what do I say? Help to change, improve, And this is my way of relating to my ancestors. And I realize everything I just said can be extrapolated outward to a more universal understanding, but just starting with something toward my more immediate core, self core, if you like. Anyway, it's just, so yeah. So that's what we said earlier made me think of, and I will wander around here today, bumping into walls, thinking about it some more.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I believe that when any one of us engage the task of fulfilling the spiritual purpose for which we've come into this physical experience at all, on both an individual level within the context of one lifetime, you know, all the things we have to work out and relationships we have to deal with and learn from within one lifetime, as well as begin to engage that task in a more cosmic sense. And we begin to recognize that we have participated in multiple lifetimes and deal with the overarching goals across multiple lifetimes, even if we're not consciously aware of what they are. All of our ancestors become, they are brought along with the process of enlightenment. So when a particular ancestral line, let's say, ends, quote unquote, in enlightenment or in the completion, for lack of a better term, of the spiritual purpose for entering this physical experience, everyone that is a part of that ancestral line and everyone connected to it is also affected positively by it, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys don't mind, I want to back up a minute. First, so what I want to ask is something Audrey said that really got my attention with the cube and the inner. I'm gonna ask her to repeat that, please, and I also and even expound on it if you can, and also come back to Evelyn, because Evelyn brought it up about the fourth dimension or something. Does that sound like what you were looking at, Evelyn, in your book? Does that connect to what you were asking or demonstrating as well? So I start with Audrey. I want to ask Audrey to repeat that and kind of explain it if she can, because that kind of hit me. And let's hear that one more time if she doesn't mind.
Sure. I just remember when we were talking about something like weeks ago, and we were talking about wine and the thoughts and all that, and then what 7 meant. And I was doing some research on it, and I came across this where they were talking about in sort of in a physical dimension, 7 is kind of like a cube. Because it's perfectly balanced and all of that. And we know a cube is a 3-dimensional figure. But it also said that something about if you did 7 times 10 or 7 times 100, you would be talking about the inward part of the cube, getting to, and I interpret it as basically wisdom. And I think that inward part of the cube would be like a 4th dimension in which it's sort of like a recognition of yourself and who you are. And almost like if you are going to be balanced, then you have to deal with that inward part, that dimension of yourself. Anyway, that's all I can say.
I didn't. It just caught my attention when you said that, when you talked about the cube and seven being balanced, and yeah, that's the part with the inward working of you looking at yourself and dealing with it and embracing it. That kind of got my attention. I never heard that before put that way. I thought that was worth repeating. Does anybody see anything more in what Audrey just said? Okay. Evelyn, are you good with your question of that? Does that help?
It did. And I know we could go deeper with the fourth dimension, but I know that there will come a time where we can do that. But I want to say something to what Audrey was saying, because I also had saw that in a book, and it says that the woman is the cube, the square, and the man is the triangle. And I really didn't go back to visit. I'm gonna go back and visit that, but because I'm gonna read it again. But yeah, I understood what everybody was saying, and Pastor elaborated on it. So yeah, but it just burned me. I mean, I looked the man in the eye really, because I know who said it, and I just walked off because I know it wasn't going to benefit me or him. So yeah, but I hear you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Is there anyone else? Any other questions, comments?
Well, if I can just finish what I was saying just in a second, and I wanted to say this for some time, and hopefully it's useful for others. But again, just building off of what Nick said, and if I just simplify it down, there's an introduction to a book called Love in the Time of Cholera. I forget his name, Garcia. I don't have a copy of the book, and I can't remember, and I read it a long time ago. But it's about a young soul that's getting ready to enter into this plane of existence, and how it doesn't want to leave its friends and the comfort and love of its environment, all that kind of stuff. But just that always touched me. But if I combine that with what I said earlier, and then I go back to a book which is very profound, another one very profound to me, with the Genesis Meditations. If anybody remembers our reading that by Neil Douglas Klotz. The way he constructs the second half of the book, he begins each chapter with as if the village was sitting around a fire. And I would say it's a shaman-like personage. And I believe I'm correct. I don't have the book in front of me. It's a woman, it's a feminine woman who's recounting the story of the village, of the people in the village. And each chapter is a contribution to that story, which helps you sort of work your way through the book. And then one of the challenges he has in there are exercises, if you like, is he says, and he means it literally, however clumsily we would do it, we all are writing and need to write our own creation stories. And I just thought out in the context, everything I just said a little bit earlier, it's just something I wanted to get into and do. And I'm fortunate I got a son who's a struggling young author, so he can clean up any mess I make in the writing, but it doesn't matter. It's just getting it down. And that's in Douglas Klotz's, in his book, he's challenging us to do that for what it would reveal of ourselves, to ourselves, and others. Anyway, so that's just completing the thought I had earlier. And maybe I'm just expressing what I think is part of a journey I'm still taking and need to get to. But and if that helps others, then I offer it in that spirit. I guess we say I'm done at this point.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? I guess just a thought on what Richard was saying is because it's something I guess I've given some thought to as probably as much as anyone else, who tries to see things spiritually is how much of an influence do we have in being reincarnated or coming back. And my conclusion, I guess, just based on my understanding of spiritual things is not so much that I choose my family, but I have an indirect way of choosing the path based on what I need. So this is what I need. These are the things that would challenge me to grow to what I need to be. So this is the path that I take because this is what I desire to be. And
Well, I don't see what I said and what you've just said or are saying in conflict at all.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
two interpretations. Yeah. It's just I'm saying it in a rather simple, fun way. I mean, to
Yeah.
engage yourself in something that would be kind of fascinating to do, I think, and not just think about, but write down, because we all know, or I know in my life's experience, there's a big difference what you got in your head and what you write down, and then you look at, and that helps a lot of times to clarify things. But I just think it would be not just fascinating in some abstract, intellectual way, but just could be very profound to oneself.
Yeah. Even if you tie in what Nick was talking about earlier, the baby in the womb and the spirit coming and going, what influences that?
No, I think what I'm saying is that's all part of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm agreeing.
And I hope others see that too, and see it as an interesting thing. And again, it's just a construct, but if that helps us get to an understanding at a certain place about ourselves and what we understand of the world, then isn't that a good thing? So.
Yeah. That just further, as the more we gain understanding of what's in the book, that these allegories that's in the book, the more I'm not at a place of fear anymore about anything we read. Nothing is destructive. All of it is creative. All of it is life-giving. All of it is enlightening. And so there's nothing that you can move to embrace that can harm you or bring harm to mankind. On that note, we have these opportunities. It's a beautiful thing, guys. It's about a quarter after. Do we have anything else to claim our attention for today? Well, to me anyway, if you guys don't object, I think this is a good place to pause, and we will resume again tomorrow evening, 6 p.m. Okay. I hope you have a great day, and thanks to everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank